Hello everyone, I just wanted to come on here and make a little video. It's going to be a more political video, and in the past when I've discussed politics, it's been in the framework of other political commentators, and the specific one I've talked about in the past is Philip DeFranco. If you're not aware, Philip DeFranco has a very popular TikTok page where it's basically surrounded completely around global politics and global warfare, which is already kind of slimy in the first place. He only talks about war, but not from oh, let's stop this war sense. He only talks about it in a way where he's supporting American allies. It doesn't really matter the context of the situation. Philip DeFranco will always side with American allies, and he'll never call to end this war conflict. He'll simply shit on the other side, the non-American ally, just to get some views. But today I specifically want to talk about the events of the Nord Stream pipeline being sabotaged. So if you didn't know, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 is a set of pipelines going between Germany and Russia, and it basically supplies all of Europe with natural gas that they use to heat their house and to cook. And this leads to the events of last September 2022 when Nord Stream 2 was sabotaged. It was blown up under about 50 meters of water, and all the contents of the pipeline, all the gas, began leaking into the Baltic Sea. And Nord Stream 2 wasn't completely finished yet. It was a project ongoing between Germany and Russia and a massive gas company within Russia. And immediately when this happened, all the media, all Western media, all European media, American media, they were very quick to blame Russia.
Tonight, sabotage at sea. That's what President Biden is calling the leaks and explosions on the Nord Stream pipelines. The Russian gas lines are essential. They supply 35% of gas from Russia into Europe. They've been attacked, and Nick Robertson is out front.
Like a boiling cauldron, the busy Baltic Sea bursting with gas from ruptured Russian Nord Stream reinforced pipelines. More than an inch of steel coated in places in approximately 4 inches of concrete. Not easy to break.
These pipelines are only in about 200 feet or so of water, and Russia does have an undersea capability that would easily lay explosive devices by those pipelines.
Denmark's foreign minister uncharacteristically cautious about Russian ships seen in the area days prior.
I don't want to go into speculation.
Unity among allies about not blaming Russia without evidence.
We're not going to get ahead of the investigation.
Danish and German warships deployed to secure the area. Norway putting its nearby energy infrastructure on heightened alert too, as Sweden begins an investigation. The Kremlin announcing its own preliminary investigation into possible international terrorism.
Now they keep saying, I don't want to blame Russia, we're not blaming Russia, but they're literally blaming Russia. Not only Philip DeFranco, but all of Western media was very quick to blame Russia. Even though it's a Russian pipeline, they're making a boatload of money from this pipeline, which is supplying Europe with boatloads of natural gas. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's very advantageous for Russia or this Russian gas company to explode an ongoing construction effort that would make them a ton of money. But let's just see what Philip DeFranco had to say the day this explosion happened.
Europe is on high alert tonight after 2 gas pipelines were sabotaged overnight. Gas is straight up pouring into the Baltic Sea right now. One of the leaks is about 1 kilometer wide and explosions are reportedly responsible. And while it hasn't been confirmed who is behind it, there is a belief that it was Russia, and the EU has promised the strongest possible response.
There's a belief that it's Russia. He doesn't want to admit that they don't know anything. I think Philip DeFranco's a smart man, and he doesn't want to outright say it's believed to be Russia. He's simply saying there's a belief. There is a belief out there somewhere that it's Russia. That makes a lot of sense. And just with the classic Philip DeFranco energy, he had to throw in that last part, just sort of being an aggressor in sort of the mainstream idea of what's happening. He wants to put it into people's heads that NATO will respond to this with the utmost force. It wouldn't be a regular Philip DeFranco video if he didn't mention something about bombing tons of people. There's a second Philip DeFranco TikTok about the Nord Stream pipelines that he made about 2 days after the initial explosion. Let's see if he has any extra information.
Europe's pipelines were blown up by remotely detonated explosives. The UK saying these explosives could have been planted months or even years ago, and European security officials say they observed the Russian Navy near the leaks at the time of the explosion. Europe doesn't often agree on much, but they all seem to be agreeing that Russia did this. NATO says it'll defend itself against further attacks, and all this comes as a mysterious drone flew over Denmark's oil and gas fields today.
Kind of just same old with the Philly TikTok. He had a little bit more information. Russian Navy's in the area. I mean, it makes sense. It's off the Russian coast, kind of. He said it could have been planted months previously. But, you know, just blatant, like, blaming of America's enemies, you know. Every Philip DeFranco TikTok is just shitting on American quote-unquote enemies. So the reason I'm talking about Nord Stream pipelines today is because a recent article came out, a really extensive investigation went into Nord Stream pipelines done by an incredibly famous investigative journalist in the United States, Seymour Hersh. Seymour Hersh is a longtime investigative journalist in the United States, famous for, you know, uncovering a lot of hidden events that were hidden by the US government. Some really famous accounts of his investigative work would be the My Lai massacre that took place in Vietnam, in which basically a company of troops slaughtered an entire village only after R-wording like all the women, and this was obviously suppressed by the United States. This was just a evil act, incredibly evil, but not necessarily something I'm surprised about when it comes to the Vietnam War. But after a couple years of investigative work, Seymour Hersh was able to uncover this, and it became a very key part of the anti-war protest and the end of the Vietnam War. Another big discovery by Seymour Hersh was the Abu Ghraib prison, which is in Iraq, or was in Iraq until it closed. This is an incredibly infamous prison that was kept very secret by the US government, obviously, because of what was taking place there. But it was basically a grounds for some of the most brutal torture and, you know, prison conditions you will ever see when it comes to American war crimes overseas. There's quite a bit of extensive photography of what took place, and although these photos are key to bringing light the sorts of activities that took place here, they're very hard to look at. I don't think I'm going to be able to include them in the video. And the prison eventually closed after giving it back to the hands of the Iraq government. But it only closed, you know, 60 years after just the most brutal activity known to man. But those are just a few stories that Seymour Hersh uncovered. He, like I said, very famous investigative journalist, and he recently uncovered this new information that about Nord Stream pipeline that a lot of people saw coming the second it was bombed. This is an article called "U.S. Bombed Nord Stream Gas Pipelines," claims investigative journalist Seymour Hersh. So this is just a much shorter version, just with some of the best highlights from a much longer article that Seymour Hersh published on Substack. The bombing of Nord Stream underwater gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea was a covert operation run by the White House and carried out by the CIA. Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, has claimed that the U.S. deep-sea divers, using a NATO military exercise as a cover, planted mines along the pipelines that were later detonated remotely. Hersh writes that the operation was disguised under the cover of a widely publicized mid-summer NATO exercise known as Baltic Operations 22 or Baltops 22. He said that Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of top-secret planning within the American national security community. For much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done, with no overt clue as to who was responsible. In his report on Nord Stream, Hersh has quoted an anonymous source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. He said that deep-sea divers from the U.S. Navy's Diving and Salvage Center in Panama City, Florida, the largest diving facility in the world, planted C4 explosives along the pipeline, which were later triggered by a sonar buoy dropped by a plane. Russia has spent about $20 billion building the pipelines. Nord Stream 2, which was completed in 2021, has not yet operational at the time of the sabotage. On February 2022, just weeks before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, while discussing possible sanctions against Moscow, Biden warned if Russia invades, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Now, this is the sort of greatest piece of evidence that everyone started bringing up the second these pipelines blew up. It's like, wait, didn't Joe Biden literally say they would bring an end to Nord Stream pipeline? He literally said that. And it's not just that he said he would bring an end to it. The craziest part is that when a reporter confronted him about it, they asked, well, we, as America, do not have any jurisdiction over this. It's Germany and Russia. Yet Biden still said, I promise you we will find a way. Check it out.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
After this, Hersh's anonymous source said that because of the president's threat, destroying the pipeline no longer could be considered a covert operation because the president just announced that we knew how to do it. He literally admitted to blowing it up. Russia put $20 billion into this and they haven't even started using Nord Stream 2. It seems pretty obvious that the US is at fault here. Even without this article, like, we don't even need this anonymous source to know that Joe Biden planned on destroying it if they invaded. And like it said in the article, they had been planning this for months leading up to the invasion. It was a plan no matter what, whether Russia invaded or not. They were going to plan on blowing up Nord Stream 2. The plan to blow up Nord Stream 1 and 2 was suddenly downgraded from a covert operation requiring that Congress be informed to one that was deemed as a highly classified intelligence operation with US military support. There was no longer a legal requirement to report the operation to Congress. All they had to do now was just do it. Some Western officials initially suspected the Kremlin, although they stopped short of formally accusing Moscow. Right, you can say it was Moscow all you want, but as long as we don't formally say it. However, 23 diplomatic and intelligence officials in 9 different Western countries told the Washington Post recently that they had yet to see evidence linking Russia to the attack, with some saying they did not believe Russia was to blame. President Putin's spokesman said allegations that Russia would cripple its own pipelines were stupid and absurd. I would say it's stupid and absurd, and I would not say I support the Russian government. I don't. Don't try to tell me I do. All I want is an end to this goddamn war that's killing millions of people on both sides. No one wants anyone to die, and this war is only taking place because America had to pull out of Afghanistan and we had all this surplus war money that we had to put to good use, otherwise we would lose that money. And our weapon contractor buddies would be mad if they didn't have a secondary outlet now that we've lost Afghanistan to put their money into. This war should never be happening. And this sort of false information about the Nord Stream pipeline, just blatantly saying it was Russia the second it happens, that's the type of thing that makes Americans want this war to continue. They're trying to make us Americans support this war. Why are we supporting any war with anyone? It's our money that's being taken out of our pockets when we're literally paying for shit we should not be paying for. School and food and daycare, we're paying for all that shit, right? But they take this money out of our pockets that we need and they send it to just some random war that they're instigating, and they're making it worse, and they're making us believe that they need more money to send there. They want us to believe that we're under attack from Russia. Oh, they're all the way in the Baltic Sea. We're under attack. We need your money. We need to bomb them. We need to give weapons to Ukraine. The United States does not care about Ukraine. Philip DeFranco does not care about Ukraine. Philip DeFranco is like, his TikTok is so fishy, isn't it? It's so fishy. Well, it's more than fishy. It stanks. Like, it's way too fishy. Here's another TikTok from Philly D that I found, and I just thought it was too wild not to talk about.
NASA says that China could attempt to annex large parts of the moon if they win the new space race. This is the same thing China's tried to do in the South China Sea. And while the United States is the only country to have actually landed a person on the moon and notably didn't try to annex it, by finders keepers rules, the moon belongs to the United States.
Okay, let's break this down. Okay, let's break this weird ass TikTok from Philly D down a bit. So he's afraid that China is gonna annex the moon. He's saying that NASA is apparently saying that China is gonna annex the moon, but only if they win the space race. What is it, 1965? Why are we acting like this is like a new thing? Philip DeFranco is just spitting like old ass bars from the old ass fucking bald headed dudes. Like, this is like, what? If China wins the space race, they're gonna annex the moon? I could tell my great grandpa that, and he might be interested. But not kids on TikTok. And like, who cares if China wins? There's no space race. There's not a space race. China's gotten to the moon, I think. They have satellites all over. They have their own international space station. They're doing good, and like, why is he making us afraid of China all the time? This is what I'm saying about Philip DeFranco. He always just talks shit about America's quote-unquote enemies. That's why he's more than fishy. He stinks.
This is the same thing China's tried to do in the South China Sea.
Okay, this is the same thing they tried to do in the South China Sea. So he's trying to connect China and their efforts in space exploration. He's trying to compare that to China's fishing rights and international water boundaries. Just trying to frighten you. In the South China Sea, that's like, it's kind of something we don't really know anything about. It's like Tiananmen Square, you know? It's like a buzzword that you can tell Americans about China, and they'll just like immediately be scared and like hate China.
While the United States is the only country to have actually landed a person on the moon and notably didn't try to annex it, by finders keepers rules, the moon belongs to the United States.
Okay, so America is the only person to have put a human on the moon, apparently. That's cool. That's cool. And he's saying, notably, we didn't try to annex it. I mean, we did put our flag on there. We didn't necessarily annex it, but we certainly were in a space race, and we're making a claim to the moon.
By finders keepers rules, the moon belongs to the United States.
Finders keepers, the moon belongs to the United States. So this whole TikTok is about fear that China is going to claim the moon and annex the moon, parts of the moon. And we're supposed to be afraid of that, apparently. However, Philip DeFranco, because apparently we've gotten to the moon already, it's our moon. We own it. It belongs to the United States. Did y'all hear that China wants to claim the moon? They want to claim the moon. That's crazy. What is this, communism? They want to claim the moon for themselves and evenly divide it between all their population? How dare a country claim an entire moon orbiting around our planet to themselves? How dare they? Haven't they heard it's America's moon? Thanks for watching this kind of dumb video about how Western media is stupid and they just try to make you believe garbage stuff. So you're okay with giving them all your hard-earned money. What do they call it? They call it, what's it called? When manufactured consent. It's when the media manufactures your consent and basically forces you to believe that certain events need your funding to go to some sort of aid that will neither help you nor your neighbor nor anyone. It's just killing people. Your money is being used to kill people, and not even the quote-unquote bad people. It's being used to kill everyone for their own economic interests. The U.S. government's economic interests. This is North Star Radio. I'm Casey. Peace and love.